So I remember meeting or being put in contact with you for the first time because of our dear friend Fiona Varian sending me an SOS message that she had a friend who needed help with her horse. And so I was put in your direction because of the lovely Sunshine, who
Yeah.
who I think has probably connected you with a lot of people over the years. And when I came to yours, what struck me was the serenity around you and your family and your horses, and how you guys appeared to just not stop at anything to ensure that your horses got what they needed and had the support that they needed through any means possible, not just hoof care, not just dentistry, not just nutrition, but any avenue of support that those horses could receive. I just it was enlightening to see how you pursued it. Um, and with that, it was so enlightening to see how you pursued it and provided to them, and then also your eye for attention to detail with, again, not just their hooves but also because of the just with any intervention you made, observing whether it made any difference and how it was making a difference, and then how that trickles down to support the people around you, the people you work with, your clients, your friends, the horses and animals and humans that cross your path. And that has been a never-ending source of inspiration for me. So I just wanted to thank you for that, because what a privilege to meet someone that I can call my friend, but also call a colleague in the industry, and know that they are always striving for the betterment of the horse with everything, and also being really objective with it. So it's not just, this is what I have to offer and I stand by it. It's always looking at what you're offering and saying, but is this right? I don't know. And I think I know that there are very few professionals that I work with that work like that. And it's almost like you replicate my own internal dialogue when I'm working with a horse and I'm thinking, I've just done this thing and I think it's had a really positive result, but was it what I did that had the positive result? What was the influencing factor? And also, can we make it sort of replicable? So, thank you, Beccy. And I am absolutely thrilled to be able to talk to you today. And I'm sorry for making you get the tissues out early doors. That wasn't the intention.
Oh, wow. I didn't expect to feel that. Oh, just give me a moment.
Oh,
Thank you.
pleasure.
Hang on. There was
I can
no,
talk if you want. Do you want me to
no,
talk?
I just can't. Right, I'm all right. I'm all right.
You're all right.
Gosh, I feel like someone just peered into my soul and put into words how I feel about the horses, and I guess there's a little bit of sorrow that she's not with us anymore. The reason the horse that brought us together that we lost last year. That was a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, right back at you. When I first heard about you, I only I only really had just started to scratch the surface of what was or what is balance through movement method. And I was aware that you were the only person in the UK at that time who was representative of that work. And I'd started to see this as a way to facilitate some comfort and soundness in the horses that I was personally involved with, but primarily, obviously, our own herd of 4 at the time. And because I trusted Fiona, I'd worked with her for about 17 years. I thought, well, for Fiona as a body worker to recommend another body worker, well, that kind of says a lot. Um, and she thought she could, add another layer to what it is that we were trying to achieve. And when I met you, and I I just sat right back and observed you. And I think that's the first time I'd seen anybody treat a horse, I'm going to use the word, with complete reverence. Like the way you just touched them and the way that you know, showed them how to be in their own skin. It blew me away. Like it just blew me away. And I felt so ashamed at the time that I hadn't reached that level of empathy yet. And I was just inspired, like totally inspired to want to be like that, not only with my own horses, but with people, you know, and obviously with other people's horses. So I was like, my goodness, this is going to be a journey. This I could feel was the start of a friendship, and I could feel it was the start of a professional relationship as well. And it just, yeah, it's just skyrocketed me from that point. It was like this big door opened that was like a heart at the end of it that gave me permission to open my heart to all of the things that I'd packed away out of shame and out of guilt, my own failures as a human and as an equine advocate. That, I mean, we all have this, right? As an equine professional, we have this journey of successes and failures, where we look back and we go, shit, if only I'd have known that sooner. If only I had learnt the thing that would really improve that horse's quality of life or that person's quality of life. I wish I could have known that sooner. So yeah, so thank you, straight back at you. Thank you for opening my world into BTMM, into me, and then encouraging me to be a nerve release practitioner. I mean, oh my goodness, I was like, there's no way I can do this. This is like a whole new level of being with horses. And of course I was ready for it. I was absolutely ready for it. And you were just like this catalyst, this bomb that just went, and it really catapulted my professional career into a direction where I feel for the first time after, how many years has it been? Over 30 years of working in this industry full time, where I actually feel a level of security and a level of a place where I can take real responsibility for my own actions and for my contribution, and a real also strength and security coming for what I don't know as well, and the gaps in my knowledge. And I can look at them with complete honesty and transparency and go, yeah, I need to learn that. That's where I need to learn. And that's where I need to go next. And I can do it now with a real solid foundation of personal authenticity and integrity that I definitely feel has come about since meeting you. So yeah, I think kind of this is the future, or this is the future that I see, humans working with other humans in a really open-hearted way, where we can share and collaborate and support each other's growth. A little bit like, when you watch things like Married at First Sight and you hear the experts talk about like the perfect marriage, and it's like, that kind of relationship should add to you as a person, and not, I don't know how to put it into words, but this is how I would love for the industry to move forward, is to have these collaborations within our sectors and then outside of our little sectors, because of how intertwined all of it really is, even if it looks like separate sub-industries within the industry. So yeah, thank you. Glad
No,
we met.
thank you. Oh, me too. I'm so grateful for this right now, this conversation, but everything that has happened to orchestrate this conversation in meeting, working together, collaborating, and then also really excited for the future. That
Yeah.
really resonates with me what you said about collaboration like this and Married at First Sight. Not I must confess, haven't watched it. Might have to now. But it's when I reflect on how I want to show up with the horses, and then also how I show up in my marriage, and then also how I try to show up with other people as well. You know, I'll take the dog for a walk, and he's just my absolute heart and soul. And I get so much joy from seeing his joy and seeing him thrive. And being able to walk in the countryside with him and see this morning, for example, we were out walking and the sunlight was beautiful, and there were some deer in the distance, and they had that golden glow on their coat where the sun was hitting it just right. And it's his fault that I'm out there doing that. And so I'm being guided by the world through his lens. And then when I meet other people, being able to be guided through the world with their lens, and then think about how they show up in the world and think about what resonates with me, and then also thinking about how I show up in the world and how that can resonate with other people. I think, and I did a Facebook post about this yesterday, but I think there's so much opportunity for inspiration in a positive way,
Yeah.
particularly because when we're collaborating with other professionals, it can easily become defensive, and it can easily become uncollaborative, I think would be the only word that I can say. But the power to say, this is what I have to offer. And then also the power to say, that's outside of my wheelhouse. Or the phrase that I use quite often, which is, I know just enough to be irritating. I'm very sorry. But this person can help you out and be able to refer people on. I just think it's, what a time to be alive, to be able to collaborate like this. And also for future collaborations, which may also feel like this. It would be incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's opportunity now. There's so much division, but there's also so much hope. And there's
Yeah.
so many people who are like, yeah, can we just focus on the solution? And we
Yes.
know that, not everyone's ready for the party, and that's okay. But we can move forward and we can start. And this year I wanna introduce or reintroduce someone back into the UK and give people the opportunity from the hoof care industry, maybe even outside of the hoof care industry, to come and learn from somebody who has all of these incredible tools. That I see it personally as an opportunity to bring the non-barefoot and the barefoot, the farriers and the non-farrier professionals together, and
Mhm.
in one place, in one event, and actually learn together.
Yeah.
So I think that's just me scratching the surface in my industry, but of course there is, lots of movement among looking at the ethology side of horses and how we use horses, but also how we are in relationship with them, and the science that's available to allow a much more objective view and a less subjective view is just mind blowing, mind blowing. There's just no room anymore. No, I'm going to rephrase that. There's always room. There's always room for every opinion on this planet, but I guess what I'm saying is it's now time for us all to start taking some responsibility, to be accountable. And I was actually thinking about this the other day. In hospitals, they have R&R events where they look in real detail at a death that's been unexpected, so that they can learn from that and take responsibility and be accountable for actions and grow from that. And we don't really have that in this industry, do we? We don't have this real place where we can be looking at what went wrong, um, and why, and take accountability. Outside of, say, some organisations that have their own guidelines and whatnot to investigate, such as the FRC, and the veterinary, the the RCVS have their own sort of investigations and things, but it's not really a part of the culture, and it kind of needs to be.
Mhm.
But it's done in a really kind way. Of course, horses were going to benefit from this, but we would all benefit from it too, and we would all grow. So I think, yeah, I think it is an exciting time. Really is.
I think that's another thing that I think about a lot, particularly around individual ego. Um, Very recently, a client of mine messaged me, and I say client, I hadn't seen her in perhaps 18 months, but she's on her own journey as an incredible professional in the industry as well. And she popped into my inbox and she said, "I just wanted to let you know that um, having had extensive discussions with Sharon May Davis, I put my horse forward for dissection, and these are the findings." And the findings, the list of findings were vast and explained everything about that horse.
Mm.
But also, I was really grateful for her reaching out to me because that gave me a whole new lens on how I approached working with her and her horse. What was going on under the surface? What was going on under the surface that wasn't palpable? The questions it answered for me when I go to see horses where there's a something and a nothing kind of going on that's really difficult to find. And then reflecting on that and reflecting on how I showed up for them in the moment and thinking, with what I know now, with the information they've just given me, how can I go on to show up better for other people?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, that's quite hard because you're looking at how you showed up. There's an exchange of money, there is someone who is presenting their horse to you, and their horse is their absolute life and life and joy, heart and soul, and you want to absolutely do right by them, for them and for their horse and for the partnership. And so to reflect and say, here's an opportunity for me to be better next time. You've got that death of ego which happens time and time and time again. And I think if we can make reflection less of a taboo, and if we can talk about it more between us, so when we're talking about client cases, or interacting with other professionals so that we can all grow together, if we can talk about where we didn't get it right, or if we can talk about opportunities where we could do things differently and it not be shameful, I think that will also springboard the industry, because rather than being defensive, trying to put it in, this is what I have to offer, or this is what I had to offer at the time, is a way of protecting yourself whilst also saying, and here is the opportunity to go another bridge beyond and open another door into another way of practicing. And that feels quite fun. So I'm always looking at, I had my first ever horse job was, I was a freelance groom on a yard, and
Joy.
um, I was young, and I think I might have told you this story already. An incident happened with a horse where um, the horse, now on reflection, had quite a lot going on and was not happy or comfortable. And there were definitely pain elements in there. And when we dealt with the horse, if we went into the stable, we'd pull the stable door shut but not lock it, because if we needed to get out, if the horse reacted in a way which was unsafe, we could get out quickly. And on this morning, it was a summer morning, and I was putting the horse's fly rug on, and I had the front straps done up, and he went to do something. I can't remember whether he went to lunge at me or try and kick me, or what he tried to do. But the upshot of that was he pushed on the door and left at a canter to the fields. And I remember just thinking, oh shit, as the horse left. And thankfully, all was fine. We caught him, but his fly rug, which was a brand new fly rug, he had pressed his feet through the back of it. So as he was galloping, it had swung round and he had pressed his feet through the back of it. And I was in that moment irritated, because that was time that was taken in. That was my time taken to catch the horse, which then put us all behind. I was irritated that it happened, and I was frustrated because I was put in that situation because of the way his human showed up to him, the environment, the factors that we, all of the factors that came into play, which inconvenienced my morning. How dare they? Um, and understandably so, his human was quite upset about all of this, because he was an event horse and he could have hurt himself, and that was a brand new fly rug. And whereas I was concerned with my safety at the time, and so I remember my boss at the time pulling me into the office, and we had a chat about it, and I explained my side of things, and she explained from the horse's owner's side of things. And she said, oh, every time we have these conversations, I'm not looking at criticizing you. I'm looking at, can you empathize with the other side of the story? And then also, what can you do next time to make sure that that does not happen? What would you do differently? What can you learn from it?
No.
Essentially, what she was saying is, what's your role to play in this happening? And at the time, I think I was 18 or something, and I was just quite frankly a bit indignant. Um, but yeah, a few more situations happened like that. And each time I got pulled into the office, it got easier to be like, oh, yeah, sorry, messed up. What would I do differently? How can I show up differently? How can I meet this person where they're at? How can I ensure that something like this doesn't happen again? Um, and and so I think that's really shaped how I look at myself and how I look at a situation. And I know that recently you and I have had a conversation where we talked about understanding that there can be multiple truths unraveling at once.
Yeah.
Multiple variables can be true at once, dependent on a lot of factors. And again, I think that's quite fun. I try to go through work with, work day to day life with seeing the lighter side of things, but also things happening in life, difficulties, problems, or troubleshooting, problem solving. It's not a bug. It's a feature. That's a feature of life. So how can we go about it with quietly curious minds rather than offensive, defensive minds?
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think that's really testament to you as an individual and your curiosity to to always look outside of yourself. And that is that growth mindset that we've had conversations about, isn't it? And it's like, oh gosh, it's really hard to say this, but a lot of the challenges in our industry come are actually coming about because of ego and because of of whew, a lack of self-development and a lack of self-awareness and a lack of self-regulation. If we actually invested as much time in our own personal evolution and development as we did in our trade would exponentially evolve and expand, and we become better people as well as better professionals and better advocates as a result of it. And I know that like, earlier this year you introduced me to Backgap, butter at the gas pump, which if anybody hasn't looked at this, please do, because it's just an incredible kind of radio show, a bit like this, where the interviewer interviews people who have experienced their own personal development, either in a very kind of humble, you know, small way, or actually it's their entire career is to help evolve other human beings sort of spiritually. And I listen to that probably 90% of the time when I'm driving, typically in 1,000 mile round trip on one of many trips around the country trimming horses. And I just listen to it and listen to it and think, how can I, well, you don't even need to think, how can I apply this in my everyday life? It just infuses itself into your being. And, you know, it gives you all this minutia to contemplate life on. And that carries forward always into any interaction with customers and with horses. And yeah, I really value that. And I value that in my friends too. Um, and I know that you've said the same, which is probably why we're friends, because we value that growth mindset and we value that ability to go, holy shit, I feel triggered. What emotion is that? Where's it coming from? And is it my shit? Well, it's always our shit, but it's always, you know, in relationship to. And I think, you know, if we all of us had took greater responsibility for what we did based on how we felt and grew from that, our horses would be much healthier as a result of it. And I talked about it in the webinar the other day, and probably the first, well, it is, I know it's the first time I've actually spoke about it, but things that we can do as humans in the presence of a horse that is going to help not just us, but the horses, because there is this measurable, tangible thing between us where we affect each other's biological systems. And it is all mapped out in science, and it's been proven that our emotional state, as depicted in our nervous system, is definitely felt by the horse. And so we have this opportunity to have such a positive impact on not only our well-being by practicing more about creating more coherence and a more regulated nervous system in us, but then we can just expand that out to everybody around us, which includes horses, people, dogs, cats, chickens. I don't know, there's not so much research on them, but there's plenty on human to human co-regulation and human to horse regulation. And I just so wish that I'd learned this many, many years ago. It was really only in the last 15 years, I'm going to say, but I really started to look at myself and my life and go, right, it's really time to sort my shit out now, because I don't want to be blaming others for how I feel. Like, I really have to take responsibility for that. But of course, we all carry our own trauma, don't we? And that trauma has the opportunity to teach us. And you were talking earlier about what happened to your younger self, and it reminded me of something which perfectly illustrates this. So I think I was about 21. I was a working pupil in a big riding school in London for a short period of time, just while I did my BHS, finished my BHS stages. And it was a yard of about 75 horses. It was incredibly busy. And at weekends, we had the opportunity to hack out and exercise some horses. So I was on the yard, and I was actually just skipping out a mare. She was a Dutch warmblood that imported her as a schoolmaster to teach show jumping. And I wasn't aware of, signs of trauma or stress in horses or any of that. Now we've got things like, I'm not pointing at the book, but language signs and calming signals in horses and ways in which we can, appreciate what an animal is trying to communicate. So I walked into the stable to skip her out and I went behind her and she turned her backside on me and trapped me in the corner. Now, 2 years prior to that, I had been physically abused. I had been basically kidnapped and physically beaten by an ex-partner, and I couldn't escape the house at the time, and I couldn't escape the violence until eventually it was over. And I've dealt with that since, but obviously it was still in my system at that time. And my response to that was literally, my life is in fear. Like I thought I was going to die. This horse put its backside on me and lifted a leg, and I thought, this is it. I'm trapped. I'm done for. She's attacking me. As it happens, somebody interrupted her at the front end. I shouted for help and I got out. But what I felt in me was anger towards the horse. Like, how dare you make me feel this way? And I wanted to show her who's boss. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. I didn't beat her. I wasn't physically cruel to her, but I could see that my yard manager was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, and she said that was really terrible what that horse just did, because they didn't understand. The horse was just saying it was a calming signal, right? It wasn't trying to attack me. It was basically turning itself on me, going, "I'd rather you weren't in here right now." It was a calming signal. She wasn't actually threatening me. But my naive self was like, "Holy shit, I'm going to show this horse who's boss." And my yard manager said, "Well, why don't you take her for a ride in the woods?" I said, "Yes, that's a good idea. I'll show her who's boss." And I tacked this poor horse up, got on her, and basically like cantered her around the woods, which was me trying to move what was in my system out. That was my attempt at a somatic experience, whilst also trying to deal with all of these emotions. Now, my older self looking back would have been like, first of all, what was the clues leading up to that horse feeling it needed to do that to tell me to get out the stable? I would have dealt with it much different. But if I had have been triggered, I would have paused, contemplated what was going on, give myself a moment, and use some tools like heart math to kind of breathe through that, get some emotional regulation back in place, call it a state of coherence. And I would have had the opportunity to evaluate what just happened. And then I wouldn't have put that back onto the horse and probably, triggered her trauma at the same time, because my heart rate would have been going. She would have been going like, where's the tiger? Well, it's on my back, basically. And yeah, it's not fair. But you see that, don't you? When you sort of around yards and you observe people in relationship to their horse, willing, like, just not aware of the impact of what's going on with them in their nervous system and what's happening. What's that horse's lived experience as a result of that? We all carry trauma, don't we? And I think it's
We
fair
do.
to say that most horses carry trauma of some extent,
Yes.
because domestication doesn't provide them with the opportunity to work through tension and trauma like their wild counterparts. So yeah, it's a concern of mine. And I understand that you've done sort of trauma-informed training, formal training as well, which is just amazing. And I think that should be a part of all of our training, personally.
Yeah, I did the trauma-informed horse trainer certificate with an organisation called Understand Horses,
Oh wow.
which is run by an animal behaviour consultant called Justine Harrison,
I love
and
this
she
thing.
outsources to I outsources. She has other professionals come onto her platform to do webinars and short courses and things like that. So the trauma informed horse trainer certificate was run by a lady called Dr. Emma Lethbridge. And she went into the neurobiology of trauma, the different reasons why trauma might occur and how that might present, and then looking at um, the sort of foundation training that you can adopt to target different types of trauma. And when I did that course, it was fascinating, and I think it should be a fundamental part of understanding learning theory, understanding how horses learn, understanding what influences their learning. But also, I think with any horse training, people need to know that because oftentimes I think you can be tricked, coerced into thinking something is a training issue when really it is deeply rooted in that animal's lived experience. And so what I've also found with this is that if we can improve an animal's welfare, there are a lot of training things that just don't need to be training things. You know, suddenly you're optimizing for actual training, not just firefighting, because of all of the environmental factors that are imparted onto the horse. And by environment, I don't just mean living, I mean environment in terms of their exposure to us as well, or you know, suboptimal living standards. So yeah, I found it fascinating from that perspective, and also I found it. I'm not sure validating would be the right word, but it helped me to reflect on relationships I've had with previous horses, and it's helped me to see, to extrapolate myself from my own human emotions and be able to see the influencing factors which set me up for success versus failure, and kind of come to terms with the fact that when I was not successful in training, it wasn't necessarily reflective on my skill set, but the situation that which led up to that training situation and the horse's previous lived experience, which meant I could reflect on it and say, this is how I could have shown up differently. And then also allowing myself grace for the fact that, particularly with my last horse, Falcon, I was working with a deeply traumatized horse that was kind of in camouflage clothing in a society where people would just reflect and say, have you tried pinning his head down and lunging him really hard because you're kind of you're being a bit soft with him, whereas I'm looking at a horse acting out a lot of behaviors and thinking, gosh, I really don't like these behaviors, this horse is really not okay. I don't have it in me to be firmer with this horse because that is not what I believe to be an appropriate response to his behaviors. And equally, I don't know how to stop this from happening. I do not have the tools, and I also do not understand why this is happening.
Mm.
So it was a very validating course that I highly recommend. If anyone's interested in trauma, if anyone's interested in the nervous system of the horse, I really, really recommend that course. It is fantastic. With that in mind, I wanted to snowball on to the next question, which is what is exciting you right now? Because I know that you are a lady that pulls on many threads, and I just want to know about it.
Oh God, I tell you what, I've never come into a new year feeling this excited about life. Like I am just stoked at the minute. Oh, what's exciting me? What's exciting me are the opportunities this year. So I am off to America at the end of May to do some training with Daisy Bicking, who is an amazing integrative equine podiatrist. So I'm diving back into what more can I do from the perspective of the hoof, having spent a lot of my time the last 2 years considering more what can we do to affect changes within the body down into the hoof. And it's difficult when you get to this sort of level of working to find someone to work with, because you're sort of your options start to narrow down as you get clearer on the direction that you want to go in terms of, you know, honoring the horse's whole being, and who can you learn from that also honors the horse's whole being. And there aren't many people that I know of, and I've always respected Daisy's work, and I've learned so much from her as I have from others. But yeah, I need to learn a lot more about shoes, and I need to learn a lot more about how they're used, why they're used, how they are applied. particularly in the UK because of our climate making it very challenging um, to use alternatives to conventional nailed-on shoes. So when you're putting a different package on the hoof to improve balance, when you're working with mud and wet and things, it can be quite difficult to hold everything on. So I want to be able to have conversations with farriers where shoes are implicated to support them in supporting the owner. One of my biggest regrets is not actually being a farrier and training to be a farrier, which of course would allow me to do all of these things myself, but the current UK law means I can't. So I want to bring Daisy to the UK this summer, hopefully, fingers crossed, and actually bring farriers and non-farriers, and actually horse owners, if we can get horse owners in there as well, so we can learn what Daisy learns, because she's had a radiograph machine, an X-ray machine, sorry, for 18 years. So her ability to see and teach people to see what's going on the inside, I think is absolutely brilliant. And she's dealt with so many complicated cases over the years. And I've been a Patreon member for a lot of the last few years where I've observed her work in case studies and learnt a lot. So I think bringing Daisy to the UK and having us all come together and really try and let's move the equine hoof care industry on. So that's exciting me. But before that, I'm really excited about next month's Scentwork and Calming Signals event, which we're meeting at. We didn't know we were going to be seeing each other at this event. We've independently booked a course, sadly missed the opportunity to share accommodation, never mind. And yeah, so I'm really interested still in how can we effectively support a horse to have a better base of support from the hoof up. So I am all for anything which can effectively help a horse feel safe and sound. And I don't just mean have a safe and sound looking, shaping, functioning foot, but in all layers of the horse's being, I want them to feel safe and sound, because from my perspective, from my objective assessment of horses, it's that gives them a really healthy hoof. So yeah, and even
Yeah,
before that, I'm looking forward to our webinar. So that's even before that. So yeah, I've got so much to look forward to this year. It's just going to be crazy, crazy.
it's wild. And I I think with the understanding with the lens that I have currently, and hopefully that lens will continue to develop. I'm sure it will as it needs to be received. I think there are so many low hanging fruit that we can pluck at to support our horse's well-being.
Yeah,
And the scent work, for me, when I'm working with a horse and with their human, I, how can I say this with not being hard on my own skill set? I really value being able to work with people. And then what I really value is that they can do the work for themselves so
yeah,
that they can replicate things. So that rather than me coming out, body working the horse and going, right now, crack on through these exercises in inverted commas, and then I'll see you 6 weeks later and tell you to do the exact same thing again. I really want people to have the lens so they can objectively look at their horse and work out what is working for them and their horse or not. And then within that, I really want to give them the power that so they can go and they can replicate the results that I might get in a session. Maybe not with body work, but maybe if I can give them some ancillary movements that they can go through that are simple. Would I say easy? Simple, I think, would be the thing, so that they can notice if there's something amiss with their horse, and they have a toolkit of things that they can do with their horse to help restore baseline function and then also continue up for whatever hopes and dreams they might have with that horse. And so for me, scent work was a huge thing in that, in watching a horse go for a little bit of a sniffari and do a very simple exercise and be like, wow, that achieved more results than my hour and a half of body work and a bit of movement. And that blows my mind in all of the best ways. I just think, how powerful is it that we have these modalities at our fingertips that people can make use of? Not
Yeah.
only to restore their horse's body, but to enrich their horse's life and enrich their life. And then again, I talked at the beginning of our conversation about watching Tokyo, my dog, perceive the world and getting so much joy from seeing him happy and joyful. And so being able to watch a horse act out innate behaviors and see them interact so positively within their environment just brings me so much joy. You know, I like riding. I have no interest in riding a horse that doesn't want to be ridden. But if you said to me you're never going to ride again, I could not care less because of that. And because of other things, which no doubt will be discovered off of the back of Rachael Draaisma's work and you know the works of other pioneers out there and other people who are platforming horse health and well-being truly with the coherence of the humans around them. It's just imagine what a time to be alive.
It is exciting. Like it's just insane. And now we can actually document that and and show people, well, actually, look, here's the difference in the horse before and after. Here's the difference in the hoof before and after. And I know that Yogi's working on more stuff to try and, objectively assess postural change and what that means in terms of the science that we've already got. So there's all of these things that we can sort of, share to help people understand the impact of these things. Because when you just talk about, you know, Snafaris, I mean, when you first introduced it to me on our yard, I was like, what the fuck is she doing now? What's these nuts that she's chucking on the ground? I was like, you're here to do body work now. Come do body work. She's here like throwing food around. But when we watched Turtle, who is a slightly sassy thoroughbred mare, for anyone who doesn't know Turtle, she's gorgeous, but she's like her bubble of space is rather large, and anyone who comes closer, you better watch out. So we watched her at the start of the exercise going over to Daffy's stable and being like, "Meh, get away," meh," snuffling for the nuts. And then within about 3 minutes, she walked back over to Daffy and just stood there. And he was like, "Get out of my way." And she just went, "Yes, okay." And just backed out the way. And we were like, what just happened? Like the shift in that mare as a result of a couple of minutes safari of nuts on the ground has just like blown my mind. Just, and I'm sure like I'm sure I've heard Rachael say people think, people say when I first heard about your work, I just thought, what a load of bullshit. But if you can see it in the behavior and you can understand what might be going on a neuromuscular level, and then bloody document it, learn how to take pictures. There's free courses on my site on how to document a horse's foot and posture and actually start seeing these things happen and then showing them to the people who you work with, your hoof carer, your body worker, your trainer, your livery owner, and said, look, can we change the circumstances in which our horses live to give them more opportunities to do this 24/7? All of a sudden, you have this opportunity to look at the different components of the industry in a whole different way. Like the webinar that I just did for Yogi was like, that to me was an exercise that the few weeks leading up to that, when I was thinking about all of these new ways in which to effectively help horses' nervous systems, was just like, it's not hoof care anymore. Like, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm coming in to trim your horse's foot potentially. But actually, it's all of these things, and there needs to be a shift, a paradigm shift in our industry that starts taking it right down to the level of the horse. And the whole thing about assessing the horse and not the thing that's done to it or the place where it lives. It's actually about the horse. What is the horse's lived experience? Let's just bring it right back down to that and start with there as a foundation of education, no matter where we are in each of these industries. What does life mean to horses? What are the five domains? What is equine welfare? How can we understand that and start from there as a place to assess what we do with a horse in terms of promoting or negating well-being. And that's what's
I
exciting.
totally agree with that. And then also, I still think this is a really tricky discussion when we're looking at the individualism of of the being, because then we come right back to ego and human perception. And so really saying, what is that horse's lived experience? What is that horse's perception of the world around them? And is that horse truly happy? Or am I deeming that horse to be happy because of my own personal biases, or because perhaps I am trying to yield myself away from the potential inconvenience or difficulty around the realization that that horse is not happy, and ultimately I need to change things, whether that is the environment, moving yards, um, not having the resources available to me to improve that horse's life. So that discussion, and then also catching oneself on their own bullshit as well, um, in order to support the horse, and that objectivity, which I guess comes full circle to objective measurement, doesn't it?
It's difficult because we want to empower people, but we don't want them to feel disempowered. And
Yeah.
that is a really delicate line. And it's one I sometimes struggle with. I'm not going to lie. It's a personal challenge of mine where I have this far-seeing, futuristic, idealistic viewpoint, and I'm like trying to meet the owner and the horse where they're at and going, what is it we can actually achieve with where we are right now? Without making people feel like terrible human beings but what's actually going on. And it's a difficult one, and it's my Achilles heel. It's my weakness that I work on constantly. And I think I am empathetic and kind, at least. I think I am. I don't know, you'd have to ask my customers, but there's always room for improvement, isn't there? And we all have areas in which to improve upon, and having the compassion for everybody can be a challenge. It can be a challenge. Yeah.
I totally agree, and that resonates with me as well. In um, you've really got to be good at observing the situation and recognizing whether the person you're working with, or what the person you're working with wants in an ideal world out of your interaction and what you have to offer, and being able to impart that knowledge in a way which doesn't terrify them, but also helps them to recognize the I don't want to say enormity of the situation, but recognize how their horses truly, provide the information in a way that lands, that doesn't scare them, that doesn't disempower them, but at the same time motivates them to make a change.
Yeah.
And I find the flux between how much information I give or not can be a really difficult thing to assess, particularly with how different people show up based upon their lived experience, and making sure that I'm not making assumptions about what people want out of our interaction, but showing up honestly for me, for the horse, and also for the human. And I think that can be difficult. There are some situations where you think, "Ooh, all of this is less than ideal, and this is quite difficult and quite a few changes need to be made." Do I give information on all the changes to be made? Will that then disempower that person and make them feel terrible and make them run away, which then has negative implications for that horse's welfare? Or do I just give them a little piece of information, a tangible thing that they can alter, and then kind of leave a breadcrumb trail so that slowly, slowly, catchy monkey, we can help to improve this horse's life over a protracted period of time? And then if I was to do that, would that person feel shortchanged because they want more information? It's always an it depends kind of scenario, and where I think we're trying to use our sort of intuition, the crystal ball, if you like, to work out how much information we can give to help that horse and that human partnership. It's hard. It's hard. And I don't envy you at all from a
Well,
hoof care perspective.
yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about, it's so hard in this industry when you don't have a shoe on a horse. God, it's hard because there's so many ways in which you can break a horse in the UK because a lot of it is outside of our control. I say a lot. The climate and the weather is outside our control, but there's so many things within the horse's environment that could very quickly reduce hoof health by some inadvertent wearing of the hoof or something. So yeah, when I'm doing a consultation and I'm imparting information, it's really difficult to not overwhelm, but you don't want to leave anything out. And I think that's why I really love sort of having these other tools in the background to say, well, hey, we can do a snafari, we can do a little bit of BTMM and kind of take the focus away from the feet just a little, but just do these things to make sure it doesn't wear or, yeah, it's difficult. And this is where I think the challenges, just bringing it back to the hoof care industry, is that a lot of the time there is this, pushing the responsibility back onto the person doing the trimming or doing the shoeing, and that's not entirely fair. But at the same time, if someone's willing to take that responsibility, they better damn well make sure that they're doing that job right. So yeah, there's this sort of juxtaposition, but hoof care really is predominantly down to the owner because of all of the influences on the horse's neuromuscular system. But it's down to the hoof carer to be able to be accurate, consistent, objective, and supportive in a way that empowers the owner to first of all understand what it is that they're heading towards, what's the goal of this process, appointment, consultation, rehab journey, whatever it may be, long or small, big or little, and how are we going to measure the success of it. And that's all missing currently in the industry. And I'm really hoping that the work that I put out and collaborating with people such as yourself, and if there's anybody else out there who wants to collaborate, to just kind of have these sort of conversations about bringing awareness to the holes that are there currently that I'm trying to fill and that we can all fill together in terms of being more transparent and taking more responsibility and having more objectivity and redefining really what hoof care should or could be. And it doesn't have to be in the future, it can start now.
Beccy, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. How can people support you with your work?
Gosh, many ways. So it can be as simple as follow me on Facebook. If you like what you see, share it. Maybe some of the stuff that we're saying might inspire somebody else and feel attracted to come and look at what it is that we do. Or you might want to reach out personally and have a consultation with me and work one-on-one with me. That is always going to be limited by geography and time constraints. But there are ways to work with me remotely via online consultation, so that supports the work that we do. But also, I'm trying to bring out more and more resources, such as webinars, such as educational videos, online courses, where people can come and learn a little bit about what it is that I advocate for and that you can bring into your world, either as a horse owner or as an equine professional, to support your work. So there's many ways. And of course, if anybody should feel the need to donate, we are a non-profit organisation and everything that we do goes back into promoting and supporting compassionate equestrianism. So we do provide subsidised and free services, as well as I'm trying to do a free webinar or educational event at least once a month, where you're free to come and pay nothing, or you can pay what you want for a ticket. And all of that goes back into the cooking pot in terms of my education and what I can bring to support people one-on-one, but also anywhere in the world.
That's amazing. I will link to all of that in the show notes. And I am
Super.
so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. And I'm grateful for your friendship. And I'm so grateful to be able to work with you. Thank you so much,
Straight
Beccy.
back at you, my lovely. Thank you for this opportunity. And I really look forward to our webinar.
Me too. I can't wait. I should have mentioned that
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
Let's mention that one now. Um, at the end of this month, we're in January. Beccy will be doing a webinar on my platform on functioning feet, what they are and how to get them.
Exactly
And I
that.
will pop the link to that in the show notes as well. Thank you,
Awesome.
Beccy.
Thank you.